9 months ago, I asked the question, do we truly need the Vanguard? I explored the Vanguard's role and purpose, and speculated ahead on the year of Shadowkeep and beyond. Now, with that year behind us, and beyond light ahead, I thought it best to ask this question again, to explore the more recent developments and share my concern with where the story is heading. Welcome my friends to another Embrace Destiny video, Kaz PhD here, and today, we've got a lot to talk about. If you haven't yet watched my previous video, I'll do my best to summarize what we've discussed so far. Back before Shadowkeep, we explored the Vanguard's role and purpose in the Destiny universe, and in the game. While somewhat obvious, the Vanguard's responsibilities are also somewhat vague, covering a lot of ground. Simply put, the Vanguard's duty is to serve the defense of the last city and organize Guardians to that effect. We have seen this in action all throughout our time in Destiny. In Destiny 1, the Vanguard leaders acted as the direct commanders of the Guardian classes, with your leaders sending you on specific missions and offering specific rewards. However, as early as the Taken King and the time of Oryx, and especially in Destiny 2, the Vanguard has appeared to play a smaller and smaller part in our Guardian's story. Guardians have been taking matters into their own hands for some time now. The Hunters have been without a Vanguard leader representative since Forsaken, and doubts have surfaced again and again over the Vanguard's competence. Time and again, the Vanguard are shown as either less than competent or less involved in the defense of the last city. The Vanguard were responsible for the city's defense, and that defense failed during the Red War, leading countless deaths among civilians and Guardians alike. While we know the Vanguard were not entirely responsible for that failure, they are the ones tasked with our city's defense, and that defense failed. Since then, Guardians have turned to others for help. While there is nothing wrong with expanding your list of allies, the Vanguard has worked inefficiently here and often stood in the way. Guardians worked with Anna to awaken Rasputin against Zavala's judgment. Guardians worked with Ada 1 to stop the raid on the Black Armory Vault, just on the edge of the city, seemingly without the Vanguard's notice. Of course, the major fracture occurred during the events of Forsaken, when the Vanguard's official response to the murder of Hunter Vanguard leader Cade 6 was to not interfere. The hero of the Red War especially took offense to this, and many Guardians followed in their footsteps to settle the matter themselves. In Shadowkeep, the Vanguard's position actually seemed quite strengthened, with Zavala handling the new Hive threat and Ikora handling the Vex invasion. But that energy has died off somewhat. Guardians have been turning more and more to other allies, including Eris Morn and the Drifter. Doubt of the Vanguard's ability to handle the last city's defense does not rest solely in the eyes of Guardians. The Vanguard's peers and even the leaders themselves have expressed doubt for a long time. The Instability lore card in the Stolen Intelligence lore book demonstrates the Vanguard's doubt over their ability to act as both warriors and leaders, and even goes so far as to question the Vanguard's very purpose. Doubt has been expressed quite openly among the Consensus, our city leaders. Details from a previous consensus meeting were picked up in spliced audio and inscribed within the frame of the Hollow Words fusion rifle. Here, the faction leaders and the Vanguard discussed the pyramids. Several leaders pushed back and showed doubt over the commander's actions time and time again. Now, while different perspectives are likely always present and somewhat necessary for a well-rounded group of representatives, it is called the consensus for a reason. The group is expected to meet in the middle, achieve harmony for the betterment of the people and the last city. However, dissension is very close to the surface here, and it is sad to see that the main lore entry showing the Vanguard doing a decent job of balancing politics and the resources of the last city, it's sad to see that etched into a weapon named Hollow Words. So to recap, we have the Vanguard, whose sworn duty is to protecting the last city and organizing Guardians, who have either failed or been perceived as failures so greatly that many Guardians, the city consensus, even the Vanguard leaders themselves, doubt their ability to fulfill their role. I bet many of you have expressed concern as well. How good has the Vanguard been at their job? How useful have they been to you? During the Allegiance quest, when given the choice, a strong majority of Guardians chose to side with the Drifter. Now, a lot of that may have been due to the Drifter's personality. Some of that may have been because Honor, not Ikora or Zavala, was the face of the Vanguard, and there were many who didn't trust her as much. But despite all of that, trust in the Vanguard has been incredibly low for a long time. Now, with fringe characters like the Drifter and Eris investigating the darkness through the study of the Seed of Silver Wings and the Prophecy Dungeon, Guardians are finding the Vanguard even less of a place to go for answers and leadership. As I stated back before Shadowkeep, our Guardian was at a crossroad, with several options ahead. As we know, we'll be taking a step into the darkness in September, and even adopting some of its power. We have seen this already, not only in all the foreshadowing in Forsaken and Shadowkeep, but from weapons and communiques from the darkness itself. Ruinous effigy, messages translated by Eris, the darkness is calling for us, and many are listening. There are many concepts to unwind here, but I'd like to simplify things a little to better state and examine the problem that I have with Destiny's story going forward. The Vanguard, both in narrative and mechanical terms, has not been well represented these past few years. Ikora bounces back and forth between relevant and completely not so, with her not having anything to do or say outside of a few whispers in lore in several seasons. Zavala, unfortunately, finds himself incredibly unpopular. For many, he is the worst character, the least liked, the most wrong, and he stands as a symbol of much that is wrong with the Vanguard. While a closer examination of the lore actually provides more meaning and context for Zavala and the Vanguard's decisions, the main narrative has been streamlined so much that the Vanguard appears to be just an uninformed, stubborn obstacle. Mechanically, the Vanguard has not done much other than offer some bounties, a weapon or two, and hosted some fairly controversial events like Guardian Games. Back to narratively, it is tough to defend the Vanguard when we consider that the Vanguard failed to stop the Red War from happening. It was the hero of the Red War, not really the Vanguard, who saved the day there. Zavala and the official Vanguard position did not endorse going to avenge Cade. The Vanguard failed to step up and act on the Scarlet Keep until it had surfaced. Despite empowering Rasputin to successfully take out the Almighty, Rasputin was then immediately stricken offline. And finally, the Vanguard has only barely shown any indication of trying to learn more about our enemies. Their resistance, their avoidance of the darkness has been so high that they are the ones who have been left in the dark, with us exploring this knowledge elsewhere. Now, I am happy to say that this does appear to be changing. With Zavala's recent visit to the Tree of Silver Wings, it appears that the Vanguard is getting better at staying on top of developments, and is forming a strategy to not only learn more about the darkness, but organize the personnel and resources necessary to evacuate the more dangerous locations. However, for many, it hasn't been enough, and given the history of our story, I worry about the path ahead. See, one of the reasons the Vanguard is so disliked in the community is because, narratively, that's kind of their function. In many stories, there is a protagonist, a central hero, who is often trained or given wisdom or power by another. However, at some point, that mentor must be cast aside. How could you have the protagonist taking on a greater power when that mentor could do that far more easily? In many stories, the mentor either dies, retires, or goes away. In some cases, the mentor is shown as wrong, and their path is not the right way forward. This has happened here with the Vanguard. Forsaken and Shadowkeep were all about our Guardian learning more about the universe, evolving. The Vanguard stood as the resistance to that, to show growth in the story, our growth over theirs. The Vanguard, who admitting to having every Guardian dealing with escaped prisoners from the Reef, making the strategically acceptable decision to not authorize a vengeance mission into enemy territory, angered many of us because their job was to act responsible, and we were not as connected to those responsibilities. The short version is this: many people don't like Zavala or the Vanguard because their job is to say no. Their job is to protect people, and as the protagonists of this story, especially the monster killing machines that we are, we don't have to do those things. We don't have to show caution, worry about consequences, or directly stand as a hero to the people. In fact, we are rewarded for not doing so. If everyone tells us we are wrong, but we do it anyway, we come out on top. We are right in the end, every single time. Guardians have been some of the biggest mess makers in our system, with a defendable case that everything we have done has only brought more trouble, but since we're the heroes of the story, that's okay. But the sad fact remains that on the spectrum of hero, ranging from directly saving lives and helping people, all the way to mercenary warrior who defeats evil threats, we have never been too far away from the latter. We exceedingly rarely have dealt with people, worried about people, or connected with humanity in our story. The Red War was the closest we ever came to this, but after seeing some hurt and coughing people in the tower, Shaxx sent us off to deal with Gaul. After being urged to help people evacuate the city and get to the farm, we abandoned them to go to the Shard, then to reunite the Vanguard. Yes, we were victorious, and yes, our actions often take on bigger threats on the front lines, but the fact is, we personally are not in the business of directly protecting humanity. And the Vanguard, whose job is precisely to do so, has been shown as incompetent, ignorant, stubborn in the wrong ways, exhibiting doubt, and not very capable. And that's what worries me for what's to come. In September and beyond, it is clear we are taking a step forward. We are learning more about our enemies, and we are evolving to better handle ourselves and push back threats. We will be dealing with forces of cosmic power, and soon our attention will be purely on galactic and universe-ending powers and threats. If our indications are correct, we are dealing with root paracausal entities capable of not only eliminating and creating all life in the universe, but changing reality on a whim, redefining thought, ideas, and concepts. Even our intermediate threat, Savathun, is playing with forces larger than the physical, giving life to ideas and letting concepts sustain her, dealing with power so strong that mere songs can destroy entire worlds. And I fear that, like our guardians, who will surely turn our attention to face this, that little thought, effort, or attention will be directed to the common people in the story. To speak a little outside of character for a moment, it's like this. In a typical Dungeons & Dragons campaign and many other role-playing games, a player first deals with minor and local threats. As they gain power, their scope changes, going from hero of the village to the city, to maybe even eventually becoming demigods, heroes of the universe. But I feel like we've never had that first step. I feel like the Red War was supposed to be that, but the game is so barely set up to show our connection to humanity that most glance right past it. Now I get it. It's a video game, and it's a looter shooter. As we've discussed before, the three core concepts Destiny uses to maintain our attention and interest are the grind, the loot, and the story. Destiny has always been more strongly focused on the first two, and for good reason. We interact with the world through the barrel of our guns, and if the loot and grind aren't worth it, Guardians will begin to turn away. However, story and our emotional connection to it and the characters matters. Without story, we have no reason behind what we are doing. Our motivation rests solely on the loot and grind, which, while great and enough for most of us most of the time, does leave our actions a little hollow. Killing monsters is fun, getting loot is great, but knowing that our actions are making a difference, especially a positive difference, that gives us a greater emotional connection to the game, to the story. It may sound silly to some, but feeling like a hero inspires us to play more. Caring about characters makes us want to learn more, to watching and making videos like this, and to playing more. If you're speaking from a purely financial player engagement perspective, emotional connection is a currency that Destiny often lacks, and one that is key to engaging the player base beyond the troubles of the sandbox, the challenges of RNG, and one that Destiny has a huge potential for. A little plot, a little humanity goes a long way. Now, whether you care about the Vanguard or not, I just hope the story cares about them enough to give them new purpose, to continue making the protection of the people of the last city important enough to at least be mentioned between our galactic ending boss battles, to give us extra purpose and meaning and reassure us that while we're fighting the big fight on the front lines, that our people are safe and well taken care of, by characters we have faith and trust in. Because while it may be a small part of our Guardian's story, it gives our efforts meaning. It humanizes the game and provides motivation, new stories, and new connections to be made. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to thank you for listening. As always, we Guardians are doing everything we can to keep our minds and bodies sharp, to investigating the darkness, finding new builds to take on even greater threats, and to becoming more powerful than the forces threatening our borders. I am very excited about taking these steps forward, and while the idea of mixing light with darkness is, to me, a little bit of a scary one, I am ready to expand my perspective and embrace new abilities to better protect the people back home. I hope the Vanguard, or whatever the general protection and management of humanity is to be called, gets a win here. I hope that we are better able to help them refine their function, unite and move forward, in order to provide us the reassurance that our people are well cared for. What are your thoughts on the Vanguard and where the story is going? Do you think the Vanguard will disband or change in some way? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to learn more about the Last City, be sure to check out the playlist that will be recommended at the end of this video. Thank you all very much for your time and attention today. As always, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you all next time. Bye now.